The room was cold, not from the Swiss air conditioning, but from the atmosphere. The International Infrastructure Investment Forum was meant to be a moment of hope, where the Global South could finally be heard, where powerful nations might finally listen, not lecture. But then it happened. U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, in a room packed with journalists, leaders, and delegates, leaned forward during a panel and said with a smile, "Before we can talk about full infrastructure support for Africa, it's important that governance standards be improved across the continent." It was polite, it was measured, but it pierced like a blade. Amal Kouyaté, a 19-year-old youth delegate from Guinea, lowered her head. She'd waited years for this opportunity, and now it sounded like more of the same. "You're not ready." A hush fell over the room. Cameras clicked. A few uneasy coughs echoed. Then slowly, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood. Not scheduled to speak yet, but his eyes held fire. Not rage, but something deeper, a refusal to be silenced again. The moderator hesitated, but Traoré's presence commanded the room, and so the world held its breath. There was a silence so thick it nearly cracked. Ibrahim Traoré walked calmly to the mic. He didn't fumble with notes. He didn't smile for the cameras. He simply looked around at the room, ministers, CEOs, billionaires, presidents, and then down at Amal Kouyaté, still holding her head. Then he began, "I heard my colleague from the United States. I thank him for his concern about Africa's governance. But let me say this, respectfully, firmly, and without apology." He paused. "Africa does not need permission to rise. We need partners, not supervisors." The words hit like thunder. The room erupted. Some gasped, some clapped. Amal looked up, eyes wide. Traoré continued, his voice steady. "For decades we have been handed terms and conditions, loans with chains, partnerships with poison. We do not reject cooperation, but we reject control disguised as aid." Pete Buttigieg shifted uncomfortably. "The youth of Africa are not lazy. Our leaders are not incapable. We are rising, not because of permission, but despite suppression." Cameras flashed. A standing ovation began. But Traoré wasn't done. "We're not here to be advised. We are here to build, to lead, and to reclaim the future. This forum, this world, must accept that." The room was no longer cold. It was on fire. The clip was only 78 seconds long. But within 24 hours, it had crossed 20 million views across TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts. From Nairobi to New York, from Paris to Pretoria, the clip spread like wildfire. Captions read, "Africa does not need permission to rise." Some cried watching it. Some stood up in their living rooms. Some whispered, "Finally." Finally, someone said it out loud. In Burkina Faso, school children repeated the line. In Ghana, an old man turned off the radio and smiled. Back in Geneva, Pete Buttigieg's office issued a rushed clarification, saying his words were taken out of context. But the internet had already made its decision. Maria Ortiz, a journalist from Spain who had attended the forum, posted a video of her own. "I've covered diplomacy for over a decade, but what I saw today was not diplomacy. It was awakening." Meanwhile, Amal Kouyaté was still in Geneva. And after the forum ended that day, she received a handwritten note slid under her hotel door. It simply said, "You will speak tomorrow. I've arranged it. Ibrahim." She read it, hands trembling. Africa's story was just beginning. The next morning, Amal Kouyaté stared at her reflection. She was just a student, no suit, no political background, no team. But today she was expected to speak in front of the world. The conference hall buzzed, cameras recharged. Delegates whispered about the Traoré moment. Something had shifted, and now everyone was watching Africa. When her name was called, Amal stood slowly. Her knees shook, but Traoré gave her a quiet nod from across the hall. It steadied her. She walked up to the podium, clutching her written speech. But once she stood there, surrounded by powerful faces, she dropped it. She didn't need it anymore. My name is Amal Kouyaté. I am 19. I have lived through blackouts, water shortages, and nights with no food. But I have also seen mothers build clinics with no funding, teachers teach with no books, and youth start businesses with no loans. Her voice broke, not from fear, but emotion. We are tired of being told to wait. We are not waiting. We are building. You can help. But do not pretend you are the reason we rise. There was silence. Then, slowly, the room stood. Traoré clapped, the first to do so, and the world watched a girl become a storm. That night, in a quiet hotel suite with lights dimmed and phone screens glowing, Ibrahim Traoré received a private call. It was from the U.S. Embassy in Switzerland. A senior official, not Buttigieg himself, was on the line. Mr. President, we'd like to clear the air. This whole situation is escalating quickly. Traoré sat in silence, listening. We're hoping you'll issue a joint statement, something that calms the reaction. He let the silence stretch. Then softly he replied, If I stay silent now, I betray millions of Africans who feel what I said. This is bigger than my name. The official hesitated. We understand. But there are implications, you know. Traoré exhaled sharply, calmly. The only implication I see is this. The world just realized Africa has a voice again. You don't get to put it back in a box. He hung up. Outside his suite, protesters began gathering, not in anger, but in support. Africans from across Europe had come to Geneva. They held signs that read, Partners, not supervisors. Traoré spoke for us. Let Africa decide. He pulled the curtains back, looked out, and his heart broke. But this time, it broke wide open with hope. The next morning, a package arrived for Ibrahim Traoré. No security seal, no diplomatic stamp, just an old envelope, handwritten and yellowed with age. Inside was a letter. It began, Dear Captain Traoré, you do not know me. I am Dr. Kwame Mensah, a retired economist in Ghana. I watched your speech yesterday. I wept. It continued. In 1963, I stood behind Kwame Nkrumah when he declared Africa would speak with one voice. I believed it then. But I have waited 62 years for someone to finish that sentence. Traoré sat down slowly. You are not just a president, young man. You are a memory, a future, and a bridge. Hold your ground. You are waking up something sacred. Attached was a faded photo, a much younger Mensah shaking hands with Patrice Lumumba. Traoré closed his eyes. He didn't ask for this burden. He never planned to go viral. But now, something had begun. Something that crossed borders, generations, and tears. He carefully folded the letter and whispered, We are not just rising, we are remembering. And somewhere in Ghana, an old man sat by a radio, tears falling into his tea. Maria Ortiz had covered wars, elections, revolutions, but what she witnessed in Geneva haunted her. That evening, she sat alone in her hotel room, recording a raw, unfiltered message for her YouTube channel. No makeup, no editing. Just truth. I am Spanish. I have walked into African villages with press passes and power. I've taken their photos, told their stories, and I always thought I was helping. She paused, her voice trembling. But yesterday, when Captain Ibrahim Traoré spoke, I realized something awful. She looked directly into the lens. We didn't give Africa a voice. We stole it, then offered it back with conditions. What I witnessed in that hall wasn't just a speech. It was a return. Africa didn't ask to speak. It just did. And we should have listened a long time ago. She wiped a tear. If this cost me my career, so be it. But I need to say it. Traoré spoke with dignity, with pain, with clarity. I stand with him. I stand with Africa. By morning, her video had 3.2 million views, mostly from countries she had never stepped foot in. And from Burkina Faso, Traoré quietly reposted it. In a small village just outside Ouagadougou, 12-year-old Dabo ran barefoot down the road holding a torn notebook. He wasn't late for school. He was racing home to show his grandmother something, a drawing. On the paper was a hand-sketched figure in military uniform, holding a microphone. Above it, the words, "Africa does not need permission." Dabo had watched Traoré's clip on a neighbor's phone. No subtitles, no explanation. Just the tone, the strength. And somehow, he understood everything. "Grandma," he panted. "He said we don't have to ask anymore." His grandmother, eyes tired from age, took the paper with shaking hands. She didn't speak, just pulled him into her arms. "One day," she whispered, "they'll stop looking at us like we are helpless." He nodded. "Because of him?" She smiled. "Because of you, and him, and all of us." Later that day, a reporter visited the village. When she saw Dabo's drawing, she asked if she could post it online. By the next morning, the boy's artwork was on the front page of BBC Africa. Traoré saw it on his phone and whispered, This is who I fight for." That night, in a glossy hotel ballroom, a private dinner was held for select African leaders and Western investors. Candlelight, wine, polished speeches. Traoré was there, silent. A European CEO raised a glass. "Let us toast to Africa's potential and the guidance we offer to unlock it." Traoré's fork paused mid-air. Another official chimed in. "With the right direction, the continent can flourish, but it must first be molded." The word molded hung like poison. Then it happened. Traoré stood up, calm, unshaken. "I came here out of respect. But if you think Africa is clay for foreign hands to shape, you're wrong." He turned to the room, eyes like thunderclouds. "We are not your project. We are not your redemption. We are your equals. If you cannot accept that, then this dinner is a charade." He placed his napkin down, bowed politely, and walked out. A stunned hush followed. Outside, the night air bit cold, but Traoré breathed it in like freedom. Inside, fork stopped. Glasses remained untouched. Because for the first time, someone had said no, and the echo of that no was louder than any toast. It happened 3 days after the forum, in Burkina Faso. A regional power station, long neglected by foreign contractors, collapsed. The capital went dark. Hospitals scrambled. Street vendors shut down. In a village just outside Bobo Dioulasso, a mother gave birth by candlelight. That same night, Traoré stood with his cabinet. No speeches, no press, just urgency. Send every generator we have, divert power from non-essential buildings, and make sure every hospital stays lit. His team moved fast. But even in the dark, fear crept in. On Twitter, a sarcastic post from a European political aide went viral. "Hard to rise when your grid collapses. Shows Traoré talks too much." Traoré saw it. He didn't reply. Instead, he drove to the largest children's hospital in the pitch dark, climbed 5 flights of stairs with a lantern, and sat beside a 6-year-old girl on oxygen. Her name was Aicha. She smiled weakly at him and whispered, "Are you the one who said we don't need permission?" He blinked back tears. "Yes, little one. And I still mean it." That night, no cameras followed him. But across the country, people said one thing. He came. In the dark. He came. By the 5th day, the world had gone quiet. France, once the loudest voice on African stability, had said nothing about Traoré's speech, until now. A leaked document from a private meeting inside the Élysée Palace revealed what many feared. Discussions about reassessing diplomatic engagement with Burkina Faso. The tone, cold, cautious, colonial. The memo read, "Traoré is charismatic, but dangerous. His words awaken a sentiment we have long managed. Pan-African independence. If it spreads, so does influence we no longer control." When the leak hit social media, the backlash was instant. Young Africans across Paris, Marseille, Dakar, and Abidjan flooded the streets with banners reading, "Awakened is not dangerous. We are not yours. Respect, not recolonize." In Geneva, Traoré sat alone in his suite, watching the protests live. He whispered, "I didn't ask them to do this." His advisor responded gently, "But you said what their hearts had been carrying for years." He turned back to the screen. Tears welled up, not from anger, but from something heavier. Responsibility. On the 8th night, a voice note began circulating across African WhatsApp groups. It was just 47 seconds long. No one knew who recorded it first. But by morning, millions had heard it. The voice? A young African woman, shaky, emotional, sincere. "My name is Mirembe. I'm Ugandan. I was raped by a soldier during a foreign peacekeeping operation. I never told anyone. I felt small, like my pain didn't matter. But when Traoré spoke, I felt something I've never felt before. I felt seen. He didn't know I existed, but somehow he stood up for me, and I'll never be the same." There was a pause. Then she whispered, "Thank you, Ibrahim Traoré. You healed a piece of me, just by speaking truth." The message went viral. Politicians reposted it. Artists sampled it. Mothers cried over it. And in Uganda, Mirembe, just 22 years old, received hundreds of messages from survivors. One of them simply wrote, "You were never alone." When Traoré heard the note, he put his head in his hands and wept. Not out of pride, but because truth spoken with love heals more than policy ever could. In a dusty barracks near Kaya, a young Burkinabe soldier named Issa finished his 18-hour shift. His phone buzzed, a message from his mother. Just 3 words. He would be proud. Issa paused. The he was his elder brother, Yakuba, a soldier too, killed during a joint operation led by foreign forces 2 years earlier. His death had been blamed on a navigation error. No one apologized. No one cared. But today, Issa sat on his bunk and watched Traoré's Geneva speech again. As Traoré said, "Africa needs partners, not supervisors." Issa whispered, "That's what Yakuba wanted." He opened his trunk and pulled out a blood-stained letter. Yakuba's final words, never delivered. In it, Yakuba wrote, "If I die, tell them not to let us be ruled again by handshakes in foreign hotels." Issa took a photo of the letter and posted it online with the caption, "He died too soon, but his voice still echoes." Within hours, the image went viral. That night, Traoré received a printed copy of the letter. He read it in silence, then stood and saluted. For Yakuba, for all of them. In London, 15-year-old Amara sat quietly in her classroom as her teacher spoke about development in Africa. She heard words like chaos, unstructured, needs guidance. Something snapped inside her. At lunch, she opened her phone and watched the Geneva video again, the moment Traoré said, "Africa does not need permission to rise." Tears poured down her face. For years, Amara had hidden her heritage. She anglicized her name, straightened her hair, spoke softer. But now, she stormed back into class and raised her hand. "Can I say something, miss?" The room fell quiet. "I'm African, and I'm tired of hearing my home talked about like it's a broken toy. We are not lost. We are not yours to fix. We just need to be heard." Her voice cracked. The teacher fumbled. Her classmates froze. After school, 3 African students waited for her by the gate. No words, just hugs. Later that night, Amara made a TikTok about it. By sunrise, it had 8.7 million views. Traoré's team saw it. He reposted it with a caption, "Courage comes in all sizes. Africa is proud of you, Amara." Amara sobbed when she saw it. She had never felt more seen. From a dimly lit office in Washington, D.C., Pete Buttigieg stared at his screen, headlines still flooding in. Criticism was now bipartisan. Even American students were protesting. An envelope sat on his desk, handwritten. He opened it slowly. Inside was a letter from a retired African-American diplomat, once a U.S. envoy to Ghana. It read, "Dear Pete, I served this country for 33 years. I fought to make America a better partner to Africa. But your words in Geneva, whether intentional or not, reopened wounds that never healed. I'm not writing this to criticize. I'm writing this to say, you have a choice. You can double down, or you can do something few ever do. Listen, learn, apologize, not just for your words, but for the echo of a system that's never said sorry. With respect, John R. Hargrove, Ambassador, retired." Pete sat motionless for a long time. Outside, rain hit the windows. He opened his laptop, sighed deeply, and began typing. "To the people of Africa, I was wrong." A convoy rolled quietly through the rural village of Kudugu. No sirens, no security fanfare, just a flag-draped coffin. Inside lay Mama Diarra, a 71-year-old nurse who had served during epidemics, wars, and famines. She'd died from a stroke in a clinic that lost power for 9 hours during the blackout. Traoré came in person, alone, no media, no aides. He sat on the floor of her home beside her daughter, Seynabou, and said nothing for 20 minutes. Then, with his voice barely above a whisper, "I failed her. I didn't protect what she gave her life to build." Seynabou held his hand tightly. "No, you came, and that's more than any president has ever done for us." Outside, dozens of villagers stood in silence. No one expected him to show up, but he did. He knelt beside the coffin, touched it gently, and said, "We will build your hospital again, not with foreign hands, but with the hands of those you healed." A single white flower dropped from his pocket. The video leaked later. No one could watch without weeping, and millions whispered the same thing across Africa. "He mourns with us. He belongs to us." 1 week later, Accra, Ghana. The African Youth Policy Summit invited Ibrahim Traoré as the closing speaker. He almost declined. "I don't want to be a symbol," he said. "You already are," his advisor replied. The stadium was packed. When Traoré stepped on stage, the silence was heavy. Cameras streamed live to over 20 countries. Young people leaned forward. He took no podium, no teleprompter, just a mic in hand. "When I spoke in Geneva, I didn't plan to start a fire. I only meant to light a candle." He paused. "But then I realized, candles wake the wind." He looked into the crowd, voice steady. "Don't let my face become a shield for your silence. You must rise too, not for me, for your own names, for the girl in London, for the soldier's brother, for the nurse who died with honor." A standing ovation broke out, not of claps, but of tears and raised fists. Some wept openly. One young man fainted. And as Traoré left the stage, he turned back and said just one thing: "Africa is not waiting anymore." The lights dimmed. The moment was history. Back in Geneva 1 month later, a special UN session was convened. Topic: Partnerships with Africa. Every seat was filled. All the names, the usual suspects, were present. Traoré entered the hall quietly, dressed in traditional faso d'Anfani, He was not the keynote speaker, but when a delegate from Norway asked him for closing remarks, he stood up slowly. No speech, no notes, just this: Africa is not a child, and we will not sit at small tables anymore. We don't ask for charity, we ask for fairness, and if fairness cannot be given, then we'll rise without it. A pause. We are no longer begging for bridges. We are building our own roads. The room froze. Even those who disagreed stayed silent, because in his voice was something no report could measure: grief, hope, power, love. Outside, snow fell gently. Inside, the hearts of millions watching live across the world, from Nairobi to Detroit, Bamako to Boston, broke open. Tears, pride, reverence. The world didn't just hear him, they felt him. If your heart is shaking right now, if you cried for Aisha, for Amara, for Mama Diarra, if you whispered yes when Traoré said Africa will rise, then don't let this moment fade. Like this video so more hearts can hear this story. Comment the country you're watching from. Let the world see Africa's voice is everywhere. And subscribe, not just to this channel, but to a movement of stories that remind us we are not weak, we are rising, and the world will remember.